It was the passing of the Newcastle budget with its rate rise of almost 9.5% that prompted independent councillor John Tate to surrender his posts at the head of two committees. Labor councillor Keith Parsons regards the move as a hollow gesture.
I'm not going to resign, and the call for a resignation really is Keith Parsons reacting to something that I think is a deficiency in the way he supported the budget.
Councillor Tate is angry the budget will increase general rates by an average of about $22, while at the same time cutting back on services such as libraries. He argues the council should spend less on the arts and more on services. However, his Labor counterpart says it's time Councillor Tate fell into line and helped sell the budget to ratepayers.
He needs to respect that his fellow councillors have come up with a decision that he doesn't agree with completely, but it's time he got behind that decision rather than making grandstanding gestures.
Really what I'm trying to do is focus the fact that Newcastle rates have gone up by 15% in 2 years, and that's not acceptable.
Phil Hind, NBN News. Monitors from the Hunter Water Corporation today took readings and water samples from 14 locations around Lake Macquarie. More than 100 millimetres of rain in the past few days has pushed the area's stormwater and sewage systems beyond their limits, the overflow finding its way into the lake.
We'd all like to have systems that operated perfectly under all conditions, but the realities are that there are a number of impacts of wet weather on our system. And we can't build it to a capacity where it can handle all contingencies.
While the results of the tests won't be confirmed until Monday, Hunter Water says there's no doubt bacteria levels are well beyond safe limits. However, they say it's only a danger for people entering the water.
What you would have to do is be in there having a swim. You would have to swallow some water, and then it is possible that having swallowed the water you might get a gastrointestinal upset.
While the risk to public health is small, the situation highlights the growing pressure on the lake from increasing development. Hunter Water will carry out an EIS over the next 12 months on upgrading the sewage system, but says in the end it's a decision for residents.
We know when it rains we get this impact. If we spend varying amounts of money we can get a lesser impact, but ultimately you, the community, have to pay what you think is the right balance.
Phil Hind, NBN News.
Steve Linnane was helping local tradesmen at Boots Plumbing Supplies today, but much of this week will be spent getting the Knights ready for the game against Souths at Marathon Stadium, following a washout earlier this year.
It's come very quick, but I've always aspired to become a first-grade coach. This week's just a small step that way, I suppose, and hopefully I'll do a good job while Mel's away.
Linnane was appointed reserve grade coach at the Knights after coaching Curry to 3 successive premierships in the Newcastle Rugby League competition. It followed a successful career as a player, 120 games for the Knights and the Dragons, including a grand final appearance with St George. But his biggest test could come this weekend, as he tries to fill the shoes of Malcolm Reilly with a team depleted by injuries.
We've pretty much been in the same boat all year. We haven't had Andrew Johns all year, and Brett Grogan's been out most of the season. Wayne Richards has been out about 7 weeks now, and we're coping with that pretty well.
Meanwhile, Noel Goldthorpe is back in the Mariners' run-on team following the sidelining of Brett Camorley for 3 weeks. The halfback who pushed Goldthorpe out of the top team fractured his hand in Saturday's win against Adelaide. The hero of the Tri-Series now gets his chance to impress against North Queensland as the Mariners try to win their first away game of the season.
I made the comment to them today that you can nearly smell a semi-final berth. We've got a little bit of work to do, and I still think we've got to win 3 out of our last 4.
There are also injury clouds hanging over Robbie Ross and Kevin Iro, with both to undergo physicals later this week. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
It was an eye-opening experience for board members of the Meat Industry Authority today who inspected the Steggles plant in Beresfield. It was their first close-up look into poultry processing after taking over responsibility of the industry's hygiene standards last week.
Hygiene standards are very high. Steggles plant here is of course one of the best and most sophisticated in Australia, and they've implemented their own quality assurance standards.
It's that kind of system whereby processing plants and abattoirs formulate their own quality assurance programs that the authority has just implemented to make companies more accountable.
It's a better system is because it requires management and all the staff working on the plant to have a commitment to quality control throughout the whole plant. So it does require a culture change.
With enormous public concern over meat contamination after a number of bacteria outbreaks, the authority wants its powers extended. At the moment, it only governs processing plants, not the retailing sector, where Mr Bailey says contamination is more likely to occur.
We would prefer to have responsibility right down to the retail level so we could have a consistent standard right through the industry. I'm not suggesting that there's not, but if it's under one authority, you've got greater controls right through.
Simone Cobb, NBN News.
John Weir has been fighting fires for nearly 20 years. As the station commander of Cardiff Fire Brigade, he's seen hundreds of houses and buildings go up in flames and saved countless lives. Responding quickly to an emergency is a reaction most fireys will tell you they can't switch off just because the shift is over. Relaxing at his Mayfield West home 2 years ago, Mr Weir saw smoke billowing from his neighbour's house and, with little concern for the danger, battled smoke and flames to find his friend.
First priority, like I said, is to try and get your mate out or the person you're in there after, and you worry about the aftermath after.
Tragically, the man was already dead, but today Mr Weir was awarded a St John's Ambulance Commendation for his off-duty efforts.
An award is nice to receive, but you do the job without wanting awards.
He's one of 12 in the state to be presented with the accolade. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
McLaughlin's arrival at RAF Williamtown had raised hopes of an announcement on the base's future. With hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, the hunter is eagerly awaiting a decision. But any hopes were dashed today. The minister simply in town for a photo opportunity and to check the base under a new Defence Force efficiency program. According to the minister, it could be years before a decision is made on the Joint Defence Headquarters.
We're not building new bricks and mortar until we get the defence business settled down and the new expenditure programs, and that'll be some years.
Is that no decision has been made yet, except for the fact that they will not invest $250 million in bricks and mortar.
More promising is the airborne early warning defence system, the minister claiming Williamtown is a strong contender for the facility.
It'll be one of the major contenders for all those sorts of things, as is one or two other places in Australia, but I can't see that it could possibly be anything but a major contender for any important project.
Blake Doyle, NBN News. The popularity of women's soccer has snowballed in recent years, with official World Cups now held and inclusion in the 2000 Olympics. So too in northern New South Wales, where more and more women are joining the sport each year. The cream of the crop is being put through its paces in Newcastle this week, preparing for the national titles set down for Melbourne in September. Competition between the girls is intense, with the squad to be reduced from 23 to 16.
They realise that going to the Nationals is the first time they'll be looked at for international representation of Australia. And women's soccer have a World Cup, and that's in '99, and then there's the Olympics in year 2000.
Rugby union, and they may be smaller than your average player, but their hearts are just as big. 160 pint-sized Campeses and one Campesette from across the Hunter Valley spent today under the watchful eye of Newcastle's best, the Wildfires. The Junior Rugby Union training camp at No. 2 Sports Ground was designed to hone players' skills and raise the game's profile. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
After 29 days of strike action, the dispute at the Hunter Valley No. 1 mine is anything but close to a resolution. The unions dug their heels in deeper today after vowing to support the miners' cause against Rio Tinto at a Newcastle Trades Hall Council meeting.
While a union is exercising its legitimate and legal right to defend the interest of its workers, it will have the total support of the whole trade union movement.
But the council stopped short of promising a widespread strike involving the wharfies and train drivers if the dispute escalated. The unions have accused Rio Tinto of trying to involve the entire coal chain to break the miners' resolve. Port Waratah Coal Services told its employees that if they refuse to load coal from the Hunter Valley No. 1 mine, then they will be sacked immediately. But mine manager Alan Davies denied that, saying while workers have a right to strike, the company has a right to continue business, and to get coal to port, it's inevitable those components are involved. Shadow Minister for Ports Peter Cochrane attacked the unions, blaming them for a record 38 ships being stranded off Newcastle.
I suspect that unless these unions are prepared to load the ships, then there will be no jobs for their workers.
It's a cheap political stunt. The boats outside the harbour have absolutely nothing to do with this dispute. What it has to do with mechanical breakdowns of Port Waratah coal loading service.
The unions say the real issue is back at the mine site and that they're appealing to Rio Tinto to go back to the negotiating table to strike a collective agreement.
Tamagotchi, Oddbods, Goosebumps and The Brain. Believe it or not, these names are all very familiar to school children, and they are only some of the latest toys to hit the schoolyards. Remember the plain old yo-yo? Well, it's made a comeback, but this time it's called The Brain and is equipped with a special mechanism to improve its spin. Other favourites are
Oddbods.
And what you do with these is...
You trade them.
This is a Tamagotchi, and basically it's a pet. It needs to be fed, cleaned and entertained regularly. Understandably, some teachers and parents are very concerned about how disruptive these toys really can be. Spin-offs from the current hot flicks such as Star Wars and Batman will always be popular, while electronic games like Game Boys are still in fashion. Goosebumps are a huge hit, and while parents can take heart that it's literature, it's probably not the most educational of material. And definitely not for the faint-hearted are Guts belly balls. They're soft to touch, but squelchy to the ear. Antonia Kidman, NBN News.
The Tars were on a high going into the game, 3 straight wins before last week's washout, but Sean Trindale's 9th try of the season brought them crashing back to earth. South continued to make easy meters up the middle, prop Paul Davies looking for support before going alone to extend the lead to 12-2. The visitors looked likely to go further ahead until Waratah fullback Luke Minto defused the bomb. But South supporters didn't have to wait much longer, Gary Fairhurst intercepting a kick before racing 60 metres to score. The Lions going on to record a comfortable win. And the Newcastle Wildfires played host to Eastern Suburbs at the No. 1 Sports Ground this afternoon. The team swapped the lead several times throughout the game, but East got the upper hand early in the second half before holding off a late charge by the Wildfires to win 30-21.
The new regulations covering infection control standards came into effect early this month, but visiting surgeons at the Royal are refusing to carry out procedures using endoscopes without the proper measures in place.
If I don't meet those regulations, then I can be deregistered.
Hospitals have had nearly 2 years to get organised. Many private ones have already purchased new high-tech sterilisers. The Hunter Area Health Service says it's waiting on new sterilising equipment to arrive. It's working towards implementing new control measures in all its hospitals, but it's a costly exercise.
Now, taken to its full extent over the whole of the Area Health Service, that could cost us $6 million or more.
Awaiting legal advice, surgeons have put on hold most urological and some orthopaedic procedures, fearing they could face prosecution. That's around a dozen procedures a day.
If I do anything wrong and someone catches something as a result of this, it's going to inconvenience a lot more people. It's going to inconvenience the poor person who's affected, and it's going to inconvenience me because I'll end up in court.
Hunter Health is also waiting for advice from its insurer. One solution to the problem may be issuing doctors with a written indemnity to ensure their legal protection.
Well, I would hope by the end of the week that between the medical defence unions and the GIA, they will have worked out a compromise situation to cover the doctors in the short term.
On a cloudy Queensland day, the Newcastle Ironman was the shining light in the third Uncle Toby's Ocean Man race at Mooloolaba. Together with the Mercer brothers, Darren and Dean, the 19-year-old headed the international field in a three-way duel for the lead. Little could separate the trio heading into the final swim leg, but the two-time national junior champion showed his worth and experience to grab a free ride to shore. Racing out of the surf, Blair completed a short run ahead before securing his first ever Ocean Man win. The win made even sweeter after an unlucky second in the last event.
That last swim, all I thought about was last few weeks in Bali, and to get beaten by that wave over there and to win like that was unbelievable.
Blair now jumps 7 points clear of the field with 3 rounds remaining.
Having survived the introduction of television, video and the emergence of the big screen multiplexes, the Avoca Beach Cinema has become the Central Coast's longest running theatre. Set in the heart of Avoca, it began as an outdoor cinema. This proved to be so popular that in 1951 an enclosed venue was built. Today a visit to the cinema evokes all the nostalgia of these early days.
Well, I think it's the character of the place. It has that feeling of being an old theatre, and I think that a lot of people used to come here in their holidays. Many people remember coming, staying in a caravan park or in the tent and coming to the local movie house.
It was 6 years ago that former doctor Rod Gibbs bought the business.
I used to come here and see movies, and I realised that it had a certain charm and an ambience about it, and I didn't want to see it become a sort of a furniture barn or something like that, so I purchased it.
He has since restored it to its original glory. Movie memorabilia from all the classics shown over the years hangs in the foyer. And when weather permits, the air conditioning is unparalleled. The reintroduction of an outdoor screen letting patrons watch the latest releases by moonlight. Antonia Kidman, NBN News.
With the statistics barely dry, Premier Bob Carr has already launched an attack on the federal government, urging it to overhaul the healthcare system after new census figures showed a rise in the state's elderly population. The Hunter, North West and North Coast reflect the trend since the last census, a further 1% increase in the proportion of people aged over 65. This figure even greater on the Central Coast. And more people are renting, almost 30%, with the average rent $123 a week. The census has also revealed changing religious patterns, with a decline in the number of people identifying as Christian, and there are now more Australians not stating a religion or identifying with a religion other than Christianity. Overall, the nation's population grew by 1.04 million to almost 17.9 million people, made up of 50.5% females and 49.5% males. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
Representing combined Catholic colleges, 17-year-old Michael Hodgins was a standout at the National Championships at Parkes with his punishing defence. The Mariners junior is the only Hunter Region player to win selection in the top side. They will play England in 2 tests next month.
We don't know too much about them. We know they're an under-20 side, and it'll be pretty physical, obviously. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good.
Packing in at lock for the schoolboys, the Francis Xavier student continues what's become a school tradition.
We've had Owen Craigie, who made it 3 years in a row, and before him, Jared O'Doherty.
Craigie has enjoyed great success with the Newcastle Knights since his schoolboy days. Hodgins hopes for similar success with the Mariners. Coach Steve Ellis says Michael has the potential to do just that.
He's got great determination. His work rate is enormous in game situations, and you can top that off with great technique and defence. And he's a tough player and plays hurt. That's probably his biggest asset too.
While his representative duties rule him out of the Mariners vs Perth match, Michael eyes a long future with the local Super League club.
Hopefully, if all's well, hopefully still at the Mariners. Right, playing a bit of grade, yeah.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
This is a battle about a monopoly on the bargaining process and a monopoly over management practices by a union which has hung on to them way beyond their survival in other industries.
Well, apparently our blokes rang him up the other day and he wouldn't talk.
Information gathering and comforting words were the order of the day. Sir William Dean lending a sympathetic ear to workers and clients at the Samaritans Foundation in Broadmeadow.
And we've found more and more young people under 16s that are in crisis and need a helping hand through things.
With the income of the average Australian over 15 years of age less than $16,000 a year, times are tough. So today's trip was a heartfelt mission, inspiring the Governor-General to give one of his rare interviews.
We're seeing
a significant part of a whole generation of young Australians being threatened by unemployment.
As one of the region's largest welfare agencies, the Samaritans was an obvious start to the two-day tour, a visit that will include trips to nearly 10 such organisations. While the Governor's trip was arranged independently to the Prime Minister's visit, he had a similar message.
I was overcome, I must say, by the bravery of the people of Newcastle. This is a very brave city, and I have no doubt that it will come out of its present problems.
A sentiment which has motivated charity workers.
I think it's been very encouraging for many of the people we support that the Governor-General finds time to come and hear their story.
The Governor will launch the Hunter Mission Winter Sleep Out tomorrow. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.